What's a secret your spouse still doesn't know about you, and why have you kept it secret? I hate her homemade spaghetti sauce. It's been 14 years, why tell her now? From context clues picked up in conversations we've had, I found his Reddit username. I check it at least once a week and give him secret upvotes. Get that karma, babe. About 8 years ago I discovered my wife's sister's Reddit account accidentally. It was a variation of a username she'd used for AAM before, but with different numbers and no underscore. The numbers were a significant date to her though. There were too many coincidences in her posts for it not to be her. She was posting on the relationship advice subreddit. Her, now ex-husband was abusive. We'd known something was off about him, but couldn't really put our finger on it. I created another account that I only accessed from incognito mode to send her encouragement to leave, and to ask her family or friends, but kinda steered her towards us, for help. She didn't want to impose or be a burden on any of them. We just had a kid, and I make a bunch of money but we live well within our means, so you wouldn't think this based on appearances, so it was an understandable concern. I slowly, over several weeks and several different posts she made, convinced her that it's possible her family realizes something isn't quite right and would not consider it a burden to help her out. After their divorce I deleted that account. Nobody will ever know that the random internet stranger who was weirdly persistent in encouraging my sil to reach out to her family for help and leave her abusive marriage was actually me. This is the most wholesome thing I've read in a very long time. Thank you for giving her support without being cavalier about it afterwards. That raccoon you hit with the mower wasn't fine. I beat it to death a shovel to put it out of its misery. She was in her 3rd trimester and was very emotional. I couldn't tell her she'd basically cut its rear legs off. You let your wife mow the lawn in her 3rd trimester. I'm guessing you haven't tried negotiating with a heavily pregnant woman before. In Seinfeld, George Costanza has this hilarious answering machine message of him singing, "I did the same thing with our house phone since no one will ever call it." Going on 3 years and she has no clue. I just want to see how long the joke can last. A couple of my friends and relatives know about it lol. Believe it or not, George isn't at home. Please leave a message at the beep. I must be out, or I'd pick up the phone. Where could I be? Believe it or not, I'm not home. I don't even watch Seinfeld and I just typed out the entire fucking message from memory because my parents did the same thing when I was a kid. It's ingrained into my head to the point where I sometimes forget the real lyrics to the actual song. I have a brother that's a registered sex offender in another state. From that brother I have 7 nieces and nephews. I don't mention it because I have no reason to be in contact with that part of my family. Someone tried to break into our building with a big kitchen knife about 6 months ago. She's already quite paranoid/scared of this sort of thing happening, so telling her would more than likely mean she wouldn't sleep and probably mean we would have to move house. Does it make you consider moving house also? Not really. My mum and dad live in quite a nice area, and their house has been broken into on a few occasions. Whilst we've lived in our apartment for 2 years, this is the only incident of anything of that kind. I feel safe enough here to not move, whereas I feel that if my son knew about this we would be moving as soon as possible. I absolutely hate his brother. He thinks I like him. He's very hypocritical and opinionated. I'm all for a good debate about topics, but he's very much one of those people who think that only their opinion is right and no one else's. He's very egotistical, arrogant, and just thinks he's God's gift. When going to the store one day, my so asked me last second to take our 3-year-old daughter. I was already in the car, so my so strapped her in. She was oddly quiet the whole car ride and I accidentally went in the store without her because of it. I remembered after being in the store only about 45 seconds but immediately left the store to get her. I was so embarrassed someone would notice, so I went to a completely different store. Now it scares the shit out of me, and even when I know I don't have one of my kids I always check behind me before getting out of the car. One of the worst feelings I've ever had, and even now I get sick to my stomach thinking about it. When I was little, my family left me at a highway rest stop. Twice. She doesn't really know how big my Lego collection is, since most of it is in storage. We are moving next week, and it will all be in a stack in the new garage. Heck, I'm not even sure how big it is. She knows my /u/ so this is pretty light. Lol, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Most of mine are in a closet in our guest room. We're converting that room to a nursery soon, so it's going to be a real eye-opener for her, and me, to actually see how big my collection is. That I didn't actually find our dog, lost and alone, in a parking lot. I actually paid $70 to a couple meth heads for her. He didn't want a dog, and I knew these people wouldn't take care of her. So I made up a sob story that she had no one else, and I just convinced him she should stay, rather than me finding her another home. He absolutely loves the little maniac now. I have a secret safe in our house. I just keep some notes, financial info and some emergency cash in it, so nothing sinister. She just doesn't know about it. I had the house/safe before she moved in, and I just haven't bothered to tell her about it. My mom's husband recently passed away unexpectedly. He took care of most of their finances and didn't share his passwords and account info. It's been a huge pain for her sifting through his mountains of paperwork. He was also a pack rat, looking for info on all their accounts. Make sure your wife has easy access to all the information she'd need if you passed away. Just how bad my past relationships were. I have given him surface level accounts of my past, but the actual details are so painful for me that I can't find the words for it all. Also, just telling him the bare minimum caused noticeable pain on his face. I think the full truth would leave a sizable amount of pain in his heart. I don't need him to know the details or feel any form of pity for me. I just need him to know that he makes me feel beautiful, safe, loved and special. And how grateful I really am to finally have someone who wants to show me how beautiful life really is and can be. A few years ago I had a big cup of water on my nightstand with a straw, and when I went to get a drink, I felt something odd in my mouth. When I spit it out, it was a spider. She's terrified of spiders. If I had told her, she might have never slept in that room again. Thankfully I've moved since then anyway. And now use a cup with a lid that closes all the way. Arachnophobe checking in, you made the right call. She definitely doesn't want to know. I didn't even want to know. I will sleep slightly less soundly for the rest of my life now. My wife knows that I was in the military, which branch, and that I spent time in the Middle East. I haven't told her any of the things I did while overseas because she would be horrified at the cavalier violence. I think she would never look at me the same way again. It's been over a decade, and I'm not that person anymore, so best to let sleeping dogs lie. My fiancé told me once early on in our relationship we were playing the question game that he was in the Middle East and part of a mission that accidentally killed a lot of civilians. He told me never to ask him what happened. I haven't. And I never will. I really didn't like our wedding. He loved our wedding and often brags about how close to perfect it was, better than he ever thought, etc. He cherishes that memory, but I had a pretty terrible time. Part of it was because I had to put so much of it together, me and my friends, and he just showed up and enjoyed the party. I ran every decision by him, of course, like what to eat or what kind of officiant to get, but when it came to ordering the food and finding and hiring the officiant, it was all me. I couldn't really enjoy it the same way because I felt so responsible for everything going okay, and people enjoying it. But the biggest part of the issue is that I just remember it as a lonely experience. It was very small as we wanted it, with just each of us having our 4 closest friends. But all my friends were locals I see all the time, and they were mostly preoccupied with entertaining their kids and otherwise enjoying themselves at just another event I hosted. He had his friends come in from all over the country, even one from Europe, and it was such a big happy reunion for him. As I remember it, almost nobody talked to me at the wedding. Although I am sure there was more than I remember, I know nobody gave any toasts. I don't recall anyone even saying something as simple and acknowledging as congratulations or what a lovely ceremony. And I definitely remember at one point the officiant, who stuck around for part of the reception, whom we barely knew, looked over at me alone and broke away from his conversations to come over to me just to make some idle conversation and keep me company. I also remember standing there looking at my phone, checking some sports scores, just to keep myself entertained and look like I had something to do. I would have loved it if we could have had a wedding that was an order of magnitude bigger. So I could have my friends and relatives who I haven't seen in ages and only get to see when we have excuses for events like that. I bragged about our $200 food bill for the whole event, having a friend take all the pictures, and my $50 dress, but I hate the thought now of how cheap and throwaway our wedding kind of was. What really drove it home for me was that a couple who came to our wedding got married about a year later with a very similar affair, though bigger. She even wore a dress similar to mine, and she said our wedding was an inspiration for her. That made me feel better about our wedding. I knew they were having another wedding later in the year where she lived, for her friends and relatives, and I assumed that would be a smaller event just to include those folks. Later, I saw on Facebook that it was a real deal beautiful wedding, with dancing, attendants, professional photographs, her looking utterly stunning in a gorgeous full-length gown, and dozens of amazing pictures. So, our wedding was the template for their forget-about-it wedding. She didn't even post any pictures of the smaller wedding at all. It made me so sad. I know people love small, inexpensive weddings here, and the idea is that anything else cheapens the love the event is meant to celebrate. But maybe, for some people, something can be too simple, too small, and maybe even too intimate. I wanted to celebrate with my extended family and friends, not every single bloody one of them, but maybe 20 of them. I reduced the whole thing so much to its essence that it didn't feel like much of anything at all. I don't want to spoil the wonderful memory for my husband, particularly since I labored so hard to make exactly that for him. TLDR, drank the Kool-Aid that a very small, inexpensive wedding was the best possible idea and regretted it, but I can never tell my husband because he feels like it was one of the best days of his life. Edit, I clearly needed to vent about that a lot more than I thought, sheesh, thanks for reading. And I should add that the whole wedding, beginning to end, was only about 3 hours, so it's not I was being a wallflower at my own wedding all night, and into the wee hours of the morning. My wife doesn't know how deathly afraid of being alone I am. Like, it really, truly scares me to my core. Not being alone like having alone time, that doesn't bother me, but the idea of spending my life alone is terrifying to me. I sometimes feel like I put up with things I shouldn't, because I love her and worry so much about being alone or having her leave me. I've spent nights pretending to sleep so that she won't know that thinking about it keeps me up at night. Ha! I'm the opposite. After my last relationship ended in 2011, I said, fuck this, I am not ever being in a relationship again. And, as of right now, I have not been. What secret do you keep from your partner? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you wanna see more videos like this one.